Paul Stringini? Gini. I don't know how to pronounce that. I've never heard that name before. I got your comment and I want to reply here. Thank you. This is great. All right, he said, I am 50 years old and absolutely refuse to become an old wineskin. I love that. I'm going to talk about that in a second here. You talk about Abrahamics. I think that was the way you expressed the term. Pardon me if I got that wrong. I don't understand the way you use that term. Could you link me to one of your videos so I can understand what you mean by that? I've seen several possible choices, but my viewing options are finite. Okay. Yeah, that's perfect. And I have so many videos up, I don't even know how to search them myself anymore. There was a time where I was just on a roll. I was like, oh my gosh, this stuff is just unfolding. I was like putting out an hour-long video a day of interpretations for like a year and a half. That's too much. I know that. It was really becoming kind of, I'm learning this and going, there is nobody to talk to. Nobody. It was helping me to learn to keep making videos, going through the stuff, putting stuff up, talking with people sometimes, jogging my mind. It was a very prolific growth period. So I apologize, but my videos are really packed in there a lot and hard to search. Any one of them would probably be okay as far as the later ones are more current understanding. Earlier ones, I was not as sharp or as understanding of the material, the monomyth, and how to interpret the verse, not knowing that you interpret every verse, not just the ones that sound weird. There was a lot I had to learn, and I'm there now. What I also want to say is that I want to thank Paul, because Paul is a Christian who is respectfully allowing me to manage Jesus' interpretations in the New Testament. Of course, I'm not being disrespectful to it, but I have had people that are Christians, all over the place, actually. But I'll just say this. I have been thanked for interpreting. I have been told I'm a moron and to leave the Bible alone and to get out by people as I'm going through my work. And of course, I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing. So it's nice to have somebody that understands. There's not very many people. I had one person, a woman that I used to climb the mountains with around here. She's a very devout Christian. She and her husband have a ranch somewhere else in the state. And she was scared of heights. And I was very patient in working with people up in the mountains. So one day she wanted a climb to redo one. She got me out and up there. But she said, on that trip, she said, Dan, you're the only person I know of that is not a Christian that seems to know Jesus and explain him to me in a way I've never heard before. And there's something different about what I'm doing that Jesus is taught on the shell as being the Son of God and someone to worship. However, at the template level, that's not the case. So at the template level, what I'm doing that's where the interpretation is happening. You get things that are goofy, like, Jesus was hungry and he came upon a fig tree that was not in season and producing fruit, so he commanded it to die. And you're like, what? If Jesus had the power to command that tree to die because it wasn't producing fruit, number one, why didn't he just make it produce fruit, become heavily laden? So it's like, you read that, I read that and go, you know what, that doesn't sound right. I read Jesus and I study Jesus, and that's not a part of Jesus' character to do that. So you interpret that and you realize Jesus has this thing that this is your garden and things emerge from it. They can be fruits, flowers, thistles. Now, over the time with my struggles of interpretation, what I finally hit upon was that sometimes a verse sounds like it doesn't need to be interpreted, and sometimes it does. It doesn't matter. You interpret every one of them exactly the same way, even if they don't sound like they need interpretation. Now, okay, in this case, it does. It definitely sounds like it needs interpretation, because I don't think that happened. The tree was out of season. Yeah, all of that. So I look at it as a metaphorical story that's about me. I'm going to treat it the same way. The tree that is emerging from my garden that's not producing fruit are the things that I'm doing in life that are wasting my time, wasting my life. Jesus has another one that's really clear, fast as to the world. We interpret those the same way too. They go up here. That doesn't mean stop eating from the world. That means stop consuming mentally from the world. All the things that we're doing that keep us so busy, but also consuming from the world means physically judging what is going on and living through that physical judgment as opposed to from a detached perspective. So in this story, the way I interpret it then, what it's meant to teach us is that the things that you have going on in your life that you're managing that you don't like, I got this obligation that I hate. I've got to do this over here, this person over here. I just wish I could. You got to get rid of that stuff in life to be simple. Go sit in the yard and watch the sunset with your loved ones. Turn off the TV, get away from all of the anger and the hatred and all of that for your mental peace. That's still going to happen whether you're a part of it or not. So the objective to find inner peace is to say, I got to turn away from it. There's nothing I can do except get caught up in it and make it bigger. Why don't I step out of it and try to create something different instead? That's the idea. So in order for me to come up with interpretations like that, though, I have to be able to look at them in a way that is so objective that it kind of defies Christianity, the faith part of thing. I'm the person that comes along and says, no, I'm going to go Richard Feynman on this material. You know what? If I would rather have questions that I can't answer than answers that I can't question. I'm going to question everything in the Bible. And when people say you don't question it, that's who I get away from. Those are the carriers. There's something in here that is for people that will look for it. People will tell you, don't, leave it alone, leave it alone. It's something that shatters their belief or something like that. But you know what? There's something bigger in here for humanity, and it's a lot more than just that. Well, you know what? I'm going off on my own tangent here. What I want to say is that I treat Jesus like a guru. And if I read Jesus, and I read Jesus quite extensively. I have probably more than many people. Gospel of Thomas practitioners out there. What is it, verse 102 or something like that? The Pharisee is like the dog in the manger, for neither does he eat nor does he let the cattle eat. That is 500 years earlier, Aesop's fable, the dog in the manger. You read a lot of stuff, you start pulling things together and going, this is a blend of things from all over, and it's the same stuff. It's worded in a little bit different ways, but the more you read, the more you see the similarities. And you get down to that, it's a psychology, and to interpret it and to get the effectiveness out of the teaching, it has to happen that way. And that means it pulls out of, for me, it pulls out of the faith arena and into the, what's he saying? Question it. Why did he kill that tree? Did he? He didn't kill the tree. What does that mean? How does it mean to me? We process these things through until you, in your mind, you're meant to wire your brain by figuring that stuff out. It sounds goofy. You're like, oh, why would he do that? But by the time you go and figure it out, you're like, oh, you don't, and you weren't just told that academically. You've learned it experientially. You now know it. It's now a part of you, not just a part of something you remember somebody told you, but a part of your actual working knowledge base because you've spent time doing it. Our brains wire organically. We grow and learn. That's why we get away from media. They grow organically. We get into that. We have to get away from that. Okay, so anyway, I appreciate being able to interpret Jesus in the way that I do because I think it gets to the core of what he is trying to say. And as far as the religion, Paul is the one that told people just worship. If you read Jesus, go grab a Bible. Anybody else, get a red letter edition. Read everything that Jesus said. You will not find one thing that even hints towards the idea that I am here to die for your sins. And if you worship me after I die, I've got this for you. You're going to go to heaven. Jesus never said that. Paul and Jesus, the story there, Paul tells us that he met Jesus after Jesus had been crucified in a vision. There you go. Paul says he's a prophet that has access to something that you don't. I don't buy that. What I do buy is that Paul knew what he was doing. He maintained the template, but at the same time, he created the religion so that it would be so easy to get into that everybody would become a Christian. You just worship Jesus and you go to heaven. You'll never die. And right there, Jesus' teachings got really trashed, just kind of ignored. They're still there, but people are using Jesus in the wrong way. And those are the ones that tell me, shut up and leave it alone and get out. Okay, I use the term Abrahamic tradition quite a bit. And I have to remember that when I started, I did not use that term. I want to just, mention it briefly, but I want to talk about each one of them in a little bit more detail, just based on not based on the historical stuff that you can find, but based on my knack of what I think I'm seeing based on this continual growth of the template. Okay, so it's just basically Judaism, Christianity, Islam. You can kind of add in Latter-day Saints there on the end of it. But let's go into a little bit more detail on each one of them. There's a course that I went through some years back. They don't make these anymore. I think they're still available, but through a different place. I got the Great Courses, the teaching company, and I've got bunches of these, but I've got one called Mystical Tradition, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. This one was taught by Professor Luke Timothy Johnson. Is Robert W. Woodruff, Professor of New Testament and Christian Origins at Emory University's Candler School of Theology. Holds a MDiv in Theology and MA in Religious Studies. PhD is New Testament Studies from Yale University. A former Benedictine monk, has written more than 20 books. So I got some really qualified people and information here. This is old. It's a long time ago that I consumed that. But what we have here basically is Judaism. What we know from the Bible is how Judaism starts. If you go to there's a channel called Esoterica with Dr. Justin Sledge. I'll put a link below to that. He is Mr. Jewish. He knows what's going on. I've got some information from him one time about a book that I needed about Lilith. There was a previous wife for Adam called Lilith, and there was something in the story early on that got extracted. There was something else that went on. I can see in the Bible where there are two different authors in Genesis where something was added in. The two creation stories and the two callings of Noah are different styles. If you read the first creation story, it's kind of a calling it in. It's a very mechanical, this will happen, this did happen, this will happen, this did happen, this will happen. Then you get down to the second one. It's not like that at all. It's just a flow. They're a different style. The second one was the older one. That's the one that probably went with the Lilith. At any rate, I'm looking at this stuff going, okay, I see pieces and parts in here. There's a point where you can't see those if you're not analyzing it. When you get to the template level, you start going, this template is fragmented. There's pieces broken in here. There's overlaps in here, but you don't see that unless you can understand the template. So I got all wrapped up in this. Anyway, so Abrahamic tradition is what? The Abram and Sarai. That's when it starts. Chapter 12 in the Bible. The beginning of Abrahamic traditions. Right there. God chooses Abram and Sarai and puts them in Canaan while there's a famine. And then that's when that story starts where, he gives his wife, they leave, Pharaoh marries Sarai. I won't get into all of that. And then Abram becomes Abraham. They have a son, Isaac. Jacob comes about later. You've heard the term, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And that's where that comes from right there, that term, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Okay, so Judaism is there, and it's in the region, and it's going on for a long time. It's not that big. Roman occupation is there. There's all kinds of other gods. It's a big blend. But at some point, the Romans adopt Christianity as their religion. On editing, I could see that I really glazed over something right here. Christianity was already beginning to form. It was already out there in a different, there was a number of different teachings, a number of different, Jesus, Mary, Paul, there was the work that you can see that was from the New Testament, but is also from other sources from that time. What we would have in the Nag Hammadi, all of that was in circulation, well, maybe a little bit after. No, it was all in circulation at that time. The collection may have come about later. Parts of some of the writing from Jesus might have come about later. But, they had some Plato in there and some old stuff. So it definitely was a collection. But so Christianity was beginning to form, but it wasn't firmed up and developed. There was fighting and arguing. However, there was one group that was emerging over the others. And that's the group that, who was it? Marcion? I don't recall. Let me retract that. I don't know. That just popped out of my head. I'm not sure if that's right. But there was somebody that had a fairly complete Bible as it is now before it was adopted by the Romans. That Bible was the one that was, that we're using today primarily. There might be a few variations. The Ethiopian Bible still contains the Book of Enoch. And this is a very important point for me to make. At this point, it's gonna have to be a claim that is observable if somebody can see it. Okay. And what I'm going to say is that all of the stories that were coming about, everything from Genesis is this monomyth, turn inward and heal style. You get into the Christian style and it's exactly the same. It is the turn of all of these stories, whether it's Thomas, whether it's Mary. Mary is coming from the perspective of the inner self. There is this prolific time frame where this knowledge is out there, and all of these stories are being written on that. Even the one about Jesus spending the evening with the young boy who was lightly clad to help him undress has this homoerotic tone to it, but on the template, what it means is that this plays out in your psyche still. It is something that you have that is not very bad, and you resolve it before it does get bad. So it still works, but it's done in a homoerotic tone. This stuff is like all over the place. It really is. However, it doesn't do well to make a religion. Only some of it does. So what happens then is that it's still based in Abrahamic material. They're taking Judaism and the Torah and all of the books from the Jewish books from antiquity and combining them into a Bible and, sorting through. There's a lot of stuff there's stuff that made it and stuff that didn't make it. Okay. There's a lot of, apocryphal gospels and material. I've got a lot of that stuff up there as well. Stuff that we took out of the Bible, Enoch and a lot of other things. Okay. All of that stuff was material from Judaism at that time. I stated that wrong. I meant that it was Jewish material. It was not part of the Torah, but they had, Ruth, Proverbs, all kinds of the Old Testament books and many more were all in circulation in the Jewish community. We're going to take these ones and make the Bible. Those ones are not. And there's a reason for that. If you read enough of them, you'll see, okay, these ones are very targeted to guide this way. The other ones open things up in such a way that guidance, you could spot that guidance is happening there. Okay. You go, wait a minute, I'm being controlled. Okay. But you have to open up and see so much stuff, and it's just hard. Okay, so what happens then is that they use the Torah and all of Jewish material, but then they also bring in the New Testament. But it's all based in Abraham. Even Jesus saying, I'm here to uphold those laws, not to get rid of them. So he's upholding the teachings of the past, which sounds like Jewish teachings, it's like what? So you have to interpret it and understand that Jesus is saying, I'm upholding the template. My template is the same as that template, which is the same as other templates. People don't know that's what that's what that really means. That's why it's the same. Judaism is carrying a template. It is 100%. The Bible, to me, I would claim for myself, and I'll just make this claim, that the Bible is 100% analogous metaphoric stories that are meant to be a teaching story in the psyche. Even if there are things that happen, there's Jerusalem, there's Sodom, there's all these things. And it's like, yeah, they wrote the stories at that time using those elements, but they're monomyth stories. Okay, but it looks to me like we're going to step back a little bit and look at things from a higher perspective now, because we know what we're told, but we also know what we see. So we're going to get away from what we're told and take a look at what we observe. And what we observe, stepping back on it, is what happened to Christianity. We've talked about it, where Paul said just worship. And now it is essentially, if you looked at it, not listen to anybody, but defined it based on what you observe, you would classify it as an idol worship religion. Even though not everybody that is a Christian is worshiping Jesus as an idol, there are people who are following his path, but you don't have to. Christianity doesn't require it. They just require that you believe Jesus is the Son of God, was born to a virgin, died on the cross, and was raised after 3 days to save you from your sins. Presto, you accept him into your heart, you're going to heaven. That is where it went really bad. And I think what happens is you can see over hundreds of years, many things are not okay. Life was probably still the same, but the Crusades, there was a bloodbath in the name of God. in the name of control, taking over things. It seems like it's been that way. We don't like to talk about those things. We try to hush those things up, but they're there. They're there. So in a nutshell, because I don't want to get into muddy waters that I'm doing too much speculating on, at some point in time, the Muslims are saying, you know what, we can't have this religion. It's supposed to be a monotheism. And the Christians turned it into Father, Son, and Holy Ghost. That is three. That's not one. There's also something else, though, that they don't say, but they're probably concerned with, and that is the idea that all you have to do is worship. Okay, I think at some point, 500 years into that, they're like, oh, this is not working out. We cannot have a religion like that. We've got to control people better. And so Islam does not allow that. If you go to Judaism, how many times a day do you go pray? You go to Islam, how many times do you go pray? You go to Christianity, you don't even have to pray. There's the Muslims were trying to recover something that the Christians dropped. Now, everybody that, the terrorist, all that other kind of stuff, I want to be careful and dismiss from that. Muslims are not terrorists. There are terrorists that are Muslims, but, there are terrorists that were Americans too. You can't take an action like that and say that this is what the religion is about. It's not. Some people went totally wacko and did some crazy stuff. I have firsthand experience with Muslims. My wife is Malaysian, and she was raised in a Muslim home. And all of her friends are Muslims, and you know what? They're just like me. Not darker skin, but just like me. We all laugh like the same things. We joke around. They're regular people. We're regular people. They go home and they hear from their family that Americans are like Timothy McVeigh or, David Koresh and the Branch Davidians. There's the Christians for you. You see crazy stuff happening. You get it on media and you go, that's what those people are like. And that's not the case. We do it and they do it. And we need to knock that off and know that that's happening. There are bad people everywhere. There's good people everywhere. We need to find the good people. The Muslims, however, what they don't really, they use the prophets and they adopted the prophets in the Quran, but they don't put the Torah or nothing Christian. They don't put the Torah or any other Bibles or any other books from Judaism in the Quran. It's all fresh and new, but they reference back to the prophets, Jonah and everything else. They don't do a good job with it, honestly. They dropped it, but that's okay. Because you get further downstream and the Church of Jesus Christ and Latter-day Saints and a new Christianity develops under Joseph Smith. And so the thing is, when you read the template and you find the template, one thing you find real quickly when you start reading the Book of Mormon is that there's some chunks of pieces that you find in there where he copied them from the Bible. But they're fragmentary. He didn't know what a monomyth was. He just created a religion. Mormonism does not contain the template necessary to find the inner path. It is a religious shell only. So that's fine, but it's going to work like any other religion will that is carrying the template where people don't turn inward. The difference is if you are from there and you decide you want to turn inward, you're not going to find the path through the Book of Mormon. It doesn't have it. Okay, that's the only thing there. All right, and I'm careful to mention the Mormons here right now because they're in the Christian community, but what I'm doing is really this template stuff. So when I look at things, I go, okay, now I see Abraham from before Genesis. The Jews were doing something. That's okay, because before that, the Babylonians and the Sumerians were doing things. The Babylonian monomyth, I'm going to do that one coming up soon. It's like one of the first ones in history. It's a little different than others. It's fun because you can see some changes. It's actually there's a creation myth and a monomyth right there on 7 clay tablets. So that'll be a fun one. But so at some point you look at that and go, somewhere right now what we can say is that what we would classify Abrahamic traditions as is starting from Genesis and going all the way down to, I would say, the last book of the Quran. I wouldn't include the Book of Mormon because it doesn't have the template. It's simply, like I said, a religion, and I don't care about the religion. I care about the template. The template is the pathway in. So I've got to say for myself, I'm being a little bit inaccurate in, double check everything I say. Don't believe anything I say. Make sure you know for yourself. Okay, that having been said, I always make sure to tell people, I think everybody needs to know for themselves. But, okay, so when I say Abrahamic tradition, I'm talking about the template specifically, so I dismiss the Book of Mormon when it actually is part of it. And so I'm inaccurate there. And I cover from probably previous to, I don't have good information on it. I've got some stuff on Lilith, but I don't have a good connectivity with that. And I don't have time to really work on that either. I can say that at an initial glance, it looks totally perfectly okay, like it was doing something and establishing a mental hierarchy. The story for Lilith goes that she wanted to be in the upper sexual position, above, on top of Adam instead of underneath, and that was not okay. And so Eve came about as a result later on. But what that would be doing is establishing that mental, conscious, female subservient hierarchy, that it's not the subconscious is not in charge. The conscious is in charge. It would have done a fine job doing that, except it wouldn't have done a fine job starting Judaism. So I'm just going to call Abrahamic tradition everything starting from the book of Genesis all the way to the last book in the Quran. However, even though I know that the Quran is also made on that template, we start right off with Muhammad is 40 years old. They're going to be using the same Abrahamic numbering system. He's 40 years old when he goes into the cave, enters the threshold, and gets called by God, and he denies the call by saying, I don't even speak right. That's the same thing Moses did when he was called on Mount Horeb. It's time for you to go. I don't even speak right. I need something else. You see the patterns? Okay, but I'm not going to get into it because, again, it's too huge. I swear, it's everywhere. I don't know what to focus in on. It's daunting to me. Okay, I said I wanted to talk about this one. I'm 50 years old, and I absolutely refuse to become an old wineskin. So I'm really excited to hear people interpreting that way because that's how I do this. At some point, I realized we are analogous. These are all analogs for something for us. I am the wineskin. Wine is the life experience. If I'm an old wineskin, I can't put new life experience into me or it'll ruin it. What he's interpreting it. He knows what that is. I look at that and go, bam, you got it. Him and I connected in a place that I can't connect with other people on. Not very many people. We connected in a place of understanding that makes me excited because I don't see it very often. And, yeah, that's great. Well, okay. So I hope that, explains it. I might have made it more confusing than not. I have accumulated a lot of things, but I'm not an expert in any one area, except probably the place I'm strong is the template. I'm not strong in Greek myth. I'm not strong in Judaism or Christianity, but I'm strong in observing the template and also interpreting the teachings from all of them and knowing that they're an inward path, that all of them are that way, that becomes difficult, and understanding that they're incredibly old. When they're doing this Abram and Sarai stuff and everything that's going on, this is 3,500 years ago. We can't hardly get there mentally. It's so hard to get out of our modern biases and imagine what their life is like and why these words chosen right here would be somehow significant to them. We have to just kind of float and go pretend we're there, become their fly on the wall, put ourselves in their heads. I think that's what helps me understand the stuff more. I try to think of what it is if I have this memorized and you go through it that way. Somehow I don't remember where I heard it, something from Plato that just got me thinking. And I don't know where this quote comes from, but it's so smart. That the comment was that because books were becoming increasingly more available in his time, that people's thinking was becoming more deficient. The people were not as smart as they used to be. And what he went on to describe was that there was a time when people had these stories memorized, and they can talk about them at incredibly deep levels without having to go do anything, just conversations back and forth. But once the books came about, people didn't have to memorize them anymore, and it made it so that people had a shallower understanding of the material. You can't have those deep meanings unless you know it incredibly well. So right off the bat, people are having conversations, and you ask them a question and they go, well, I don't know. I don't remember that part. I'm going to look it up and, go see it. That was happening. And you think that through and you realize, you know what? This whole thing is that way. These stories were memorized and they played out in their mind and their imagination. And we're not doing that. We're looking at them on paper. So we're not treating them right. And the way to see this is to put it in your head. And it takes time to do that. At some point in the material, you're going along and you're actually seeing where they're modifying and evolving the material. You start off with Noah. After his healing, he's naked. Naked is meaning uncovered. At some point, that ceases to be okay. We don't have naked people all over the place anymore. Every time somebody goes through a healing process, they're naked now. We can't keep doing that. What time goes on and you're like, people aren't naked anymore. But you know what? Some people have pure white robes. Pure white robes. So the naked evolved to pure white robes. You can begin to see those evolutionary steps in the material. However, I think right now, I'm like, I don't have things collated very well. Yeah, I'm still kind of scattered. I know that. I see that. But I still see I'm gathering things in the stuff I don't have figured out, but I'm getting close. It's like, yeah. But I know what the patterns are. I don't think I'm missing anything. What I'm missing is things like, what are they doing in Genesis when they're taking Cain, tubal, Cain, tubal, Cain. What? How did that come? What is that doing right there? There's still weird things going on that they have a purpose. There's a verbal pattern in there that I recognize there's a pattern, but I don't know what that pattern is doing. So it's evident to me that there are still things I don't understand about what they were doing. They're encoding things in ways that are beyond me. The numbering count was easy. The rest of the stuff is, I don't know, but it's got to be somehow still in numbering, but they're combining. It's it's so big. All right. I don't know where I'm going anymore. Did I make sense? I hope so. And I appreciate your comment and our capacity to communicate like adults. It's so refreshing. And to be on the same page in a way that you're like, you know what? You somehow sense a kindred spirit in somebody that can do something like that because it is so rare. But coupled with that is the idea is that you are, what's the term? You're humble. I am not a Christian, but I'm talking about Jesus. You are a Christian and you're talking about Jesus, and you're not insisting that I be a Christian. You're allowing me to be me. Thank you. All right, everyone. See you in the next video. Hey, Paul, I added this in. Often when I get done making a video, I think, oh, you know what I should have said? And this is one of those cases, okay. To me, when I use the term Abrahamics, I'm referring to anybody who is a Jew in any branch, Christian in any branch, Muslim in any branch. Christianity has all the main branches. But from one tie point where Abram started, there's this branching out of other religions, that all of those are Abrahamics. That's just the religion. When I use the term, I refer to all of them equally as Abrahamics, as people who believe in the shell of the religion. They're the carriers of the ark, not the people who look inside. So when I use the term Abrahamics, those are the people that believe in the literal translation as opposed to the, I would say, spiritual, but let's really nail it down and say mental interpretation. That anybody that's not doing that is an Abrahamic. Yeah, they're believing a religion, that comes from Abraham. That's how I'm using the term. When you turn inward, you cease to be an Abrahamic, whether you're a Muslim, Christian, Jew, whatever. If you turn inward and go, oh, the religion was the carrier shell, I'm going to turn inward, then you are no longer an Abrahamic. You are now, I don't know what, the seeker on the path. You become something different, unified globally. However, talking to you makes me think that maybe I need to redefine that term, because you're taking the seeking, the inward path, yet remaining a believer in the religion itself. So yeah, I got to be careful. We're going to run into things where we don't always agree the same way, but I think we're okay. I can see that the fruits from your garden do not include judgment of me, and that's perfect. Yeah, we're both doing what Jesus teaches, whether we believe in him or not.